This is just like Vietnam all over again, mutters Chief Warrant Officer Dave Bramel as he watches wounded soldiers crawl from a burning wreck below. But there's no time to help, not with tracer fire coming from all directions and rounds slamming into his Black Hawk. It's 1983, and the skies over Grenada have turned deadly. Communist-backed forces below are firing at anything that moves. Bramel's chopper is next in their sights as a Cuban guard raises his AK-47, unleashing a full round into the fuselage. A bullet tears into Bramel's leg. His co-pilot is hit too. He's ripping the aircraft apart, Bramel shouts, jerking the stick into a violent evasive maneuver. But this brand new bird has talons. Dashing over rooftops at nearly 200 miles per hour, the Black Hawk lines up to fire with its twin M60s. Shells keep slamming the fuselage, but the helicopter shrugs them off as Bramel grips the stick, his eyes locked on the enemy. The Black Hawk is about to make its bones on its very first combat mission. Trials over Vietnam. On June 10, 1971, the thunder of rotor blades echoed across the humid skies of South Vietnam as 4 UH-1 Huey helicopters surged low over the jungle canopy. Below, a team of South Vietnamese Rangers, hemmed in by enemy fire, had just sent out a desperate call for extraction. Now, with jungle foliage blurring beneath them and adrenaline pumping through their veins, the American pilots racing to the scene were their only hope of survival. But in Vietnam, no one was safe, and there was never a guarantee that your rescuers would live long enough to reach you. Despite flying some of the most advanced helicopters in the world, U.S. pilots had no choice but to skim the treetops, staying beneath enemy radar and avoiding the sharp teeth of Soviet-made anti-aircraft guns. This tactic, known as nap of the earth flying, turned every mission into a gamble. That day, luck would not be on America's side. Without warning, a tracer round punched through the belly of one of the American Hueys, igniting its fuel line in a bloom of fire. The helicopter jerked violently in midair, trailing flames, before it spiraled into the jungle. The crew could do no more than issue a final distress call while the aircraft slammed through the trees and crashed against the ground. 2 crewmen, Specialist 5 Johnny Arthur and Specialist 4 Louis Montoya, were taken out instantly. The pilot and co-pilot, both critically wounded, crawled from the burning frame, dragging one another away from the crash as the enemy around them closed in to finish the job. That Huey was just one of nearly 12,000 helicopters lost during the Vietnam War. By 1972, the cost had become unbearable. With America's withdrawal underway, military leaders were forced to face the fact that Vietnam had revealed the limits of U.S. air power. The next war would demand more. The U.S. Army initiated the Utility Tactical Transport Aircraft System program, a competition to engineer the next-generation helicopter. This new aircraft needed to be tougher, deadlier, and more survivable than anything that had come before. It had to insert troops under fire, take hits from incoming shells, and keep flying. Most of all, it had to ensure that the United States would never again suffer a defeat like the one in Vietnam. A duel over America. The Pentagon quickly laid out a series of requirements for the new American aircraft. The helicopter had to fly for over 2 hours without refueling, climb at a rate of 450 feet per minute, and cruise at no less than 145 knots, even under extreme heat and battlefield stress. It needed to haul 11 fully armed soldiers in addition to a 3-person crew, and still be light enough to maneuver under fire. 3 giants accepted the challenge. Bell Helicopter, the creators of the UH-1 Huey, had decades of battlefield experience and inside knowledge about the Huey's strengths and weaknesses. Boeing Vertol, renowned for the Cold War Titan B-52 Stratofortress and the heavy-lift CH-47 Chinook, entered the race with its engineering prowess in large-scale platforms. And then there was Sikorsky, the rotary wing innovator behind the CH-53 Sea Stallion, the helicopter that could haul an entire platoon into combat. The race was on. Bell's concept was sidelined early in the competition, probably because it was too similar to the original UH-1 aircraft that America was looking to replace. The Army then awarded prototype contracts to Boeing and Sikorsky, giving way to the next phase, a fly-off, with both companies producing aircraft that would go head-to-head in a series of evaluations to determine who would craft America's next battlefield hero. Trials began in 1974. Boeing's prototype, the UH-61A, was a robust twin-engine utility helicopter built with crash-resistant armor, a rigid rotor system, and a tricycle landing gear that allowed it to land safely even on rough terrain. It was tough, steady, and durable, everything a Cold War engineer would love. Sikorsky, however, approached the challenge differently. Their UH-60A featured a simpler, more maintainable configuration, a fully articulated rotor, and a lighter, more agile frame. The company produced 4 flying prototypes, and on October 17th, the first UH-60A lifted off. During an early test flight, one of the Sikorsky prototypes began to drop. Alarms blared. The aircraft lost altitude rapidly. Observers on the ground held their breath as the helicopter plunged toward the earth. When the aircraft slammed into the ground, everyone expected the worst: fire, explosions, and the loss of American lives. But there was no detonation. The aircraft held together. And when emergency crews rushed to the scene, they were stunned. Every crew member was alive and uninjured. The cabin was intact. The frame had absorbed the impact. And then came the moment no one could believe. The pilot restarted the engine. The rotors spun back to life, and the bird lifted off again. The UH-60A had gone down and lived to fly again. It was the kind of resilience the Army was looking for. With additional refinements to its design, Sikorsky was awarded a production contract in 1976. The birth of the Hawk. As Sikorsky's new aircraft rolled off production lines, it was christened Black Hawk in honor of the legendary Native American war chief. Originally, the Army planned to order just over 1,100 units, but that number didn't last long. This new helicopter was ideal for various missions, going from assault and medevac to special operations insertions. As military officials realized its versatility, the helicopter quickly became the centerpiece of U.S. rotary wing strategy. The final model received further upgrades, including 4 titanium spar blades and a rotor system that absorbed shock and vibration, giving pilots a surprisingly smooth ride, even while skimming treetops during nap-of-the-earth maneuvers or hovering over violent battlefields. Combat resilience was baked into every inch of the aircraft. Its crash-resistant fuel tanks reduced the risk of explosions. The energy-absorbing seats shielded troops during hard landings, and the armored fuselage was designed to keep the crew alive, even under direct enemy fire. And not just in one theater. The Black Hawk was just as ready to fight over the ice-covered peaks of Asia as it was over the searing deserts of the Middle East. It could fly at altitudes of 4,000 feet at 179 miles per hour in 95-degree heat, yet it could also take off in freezing sleet and push through a snowstorm thanks to its electrothermal de-icing system, which sent pulses of heat through its rotor blades and kept ice from building up mid-flight. However, specs on paper weren't enough. Before the Black Hawk could claim its place as a legend of the American Army, it would have to prove itself in the only place that mattered: the battlefield. The bird leaves the nest. Black Hawk's first combat mission came in 1983 above the Caribbean. Cold War tensions had flared up after a coup toppled the government of Grenada, with Cuban-backed Marxist forces taking out the island's prime minister and seizing total control. With the construction of a 9,000-foot airstrip nearing completion on the island, President Ronald Reagan feared that under enemy hands, Grenada could become a communist stronghold, packed with Soviet bombers stationed just 1,500 miles from Florida. The threat needed to be eradicated. At the center of America's strike plan to secure Grenada was the 160th Aviation Battalion, later known as the Night Stalkers. Alongside elite U.S. forces, they were ordered to storm the island. Their arsenal included OH-64 Little Birds, CH-47 Chinooks, and for the first time, the UH-60 Black Hawk. The plan was to strike before dawn, using darkness as a cover, speed as a weapon, and technology as an edge. The Black Hawks would fly in low and fast from Barbados, targeting 3 high-value objectives: Richmond Hill Prison, perched atop a fortified ridge, where American forces would attempt to extract key political detainees; the radio broadcasting station at Beausejour, to sever the regime's control over mass communications; and the Governor General's mansion, where Sir Paul Scone and his family were believed to be under critical danger. However, before the plan could even begin, the crew started to run into obstacles. logistical chaos left the UH-60 scrambling to get airborne, and by the time the rotors were spinning and the formation thundered toward Grenada, the sun was already rising over the horizon. The cover of night was gone. The Blackhawks would now have to fight their first battle in broad daylight. Among the lead aircraft was Chief Warrant Officer Dave Bramel, piloting one of the Blackhawks and tasked with breaching Richmond Hill Prison. But as they crested the final ridgeline toward the objective, all hell broke loose. Bramel put it simply, quote, "They were ready for us." Before the UH-60s could arrive in Grenada, a local radio message had urged citizens to grab weapons and shoot down any incoming American helicopters. The Blackhawks were caught in a crossfire. From the prison walls, from nearby fortresses, from hidden positions in the jungle, enemy gunfire lit up the sky. Tracer rounds danced past the cockpit, ripping into the fuselages and aiming to bring them down from the skies. America's rematch. The first attempt to fast rope troops under Richmond Hill Prison failed. The Blackhawks were driven back by a wall of bullets. But the pilots circled back, determined to finish the job. As they approached for a second insertion, anti-aircraft fire slashed through the air once more. Captain Keith Lucas's Blackhawk was hit, wrecking the aircraft's frame and sending it spiraling out of control. The helicopter rolled and slammed into the hills of Amber-Belair. Chief Warrant Officer Dave Bramel, already wounded and flying an injured bird, had seen enough. He'd later admit, quote, "The fire was unbelievable. I made a call over the radio and said, 'I'm gone,' and out I went." Bramel and the remaining damaged Blackhawks pulled back. Some limped toward USS Guam, while others made emergency landings at Point Salinas Airfield, a strip of poorly secured ground where small arms fire continued to snap through the air. Meanwhile, a second Black Hawk assault unfolded at the National Radio and Television Station in Beausejour. The helicopters spiraled in low as they descended. Special forces leapt from the aircraft and surged toward the complex, but what should have been a swift takedown turned into a brutal standoff. Enemy fire poured from every direction. Hours passed in an exchange of bullets. The defenders refused to break. With casualties mounting and an armored personnel carrier bearing down on their position, the Americans had no choice. They abandoned the station, retreated to the shoreline, and swam through the surf to friendly ships stationed nearby. The Blackhawks, riddled with rounds, escaped at dusk. The mission was nearing total disaster. 2 Blackhawks broke formation and carved a new path toward the Governor General's mansion, where Sir Paul Scoon was trapped. Once again, they were met with a storm of fire, and both helicopters suffered hits. Instead of retreating, they wheeled back for another run. The UH-60s forced their way in. In a blur, troops fast roped from the aircraft onto the mansion grounds. They dug in, returning fire and battling off waves of ground troops. The enemy brought up armor, ramming against the gates, but the Americans held firm. Above them, an AC-130 Spectre gunship roared onto the scene, its cannons unleashing volleys of precision fire that shredded enemy positions. For a full night, the Black Hawk teams and special operators held the mansion like a fortress. Every hour felt like a lifetime. By dawn, reinforcements finally arrived. AH-6 and MH-6 Little Birds soared in, pulling wounded soldiers from the scene and deploying rangers who helped to clear paths through the broken city streets. With mounting American pressure, the enemy lost momentum, then lost ground, then finally surrendered. By November 2nd, just 8 days after the mission began, Grenada was secured. Many of the Black Hawks that had flown into battle were riddled with holes, patched with field repairs, and running on fumes. Yet when the final order came to exfiltrate back to Barbados, they lifted off again, finding their way back with no escorts and damaged navigation systems. Against all odds, the Black Hawks had crowned themselves victors. Double strike. During the decade that followed its battlefield debut, the Black Hawk cemented its status as one of America's leading helicopters. Yet in 1993, the aircraft faced a mission that put its future on the line. After the collapse of Somalia's central government plunged the nation into chaos, the United States led a multinational effort to restore order and deliver humanitarian aid. Yet in the rubble of the capital city of Mogadishu rose a new enemy, the Somali National Alliance, or SNA, led by the warlord General Mohammed Farah Aidid. Intent on driving the Americans out, Aidid's forces declared open war on the peacekeepers. In response, President Bill Clinton authorized an elite mission, Operation Gothic Serpent, a mission set to capture Aidid's inner circle and take down the SNA. Backed by the most capable American aircraft, Delta Force operatives and Army Rangers prepared for a high-speed urban strike. Once again, the Blackhawks lifted off over hostile city blocks, bristling with weapons pointed at them. On the afternoon of October 3rd, the assault began. Hovering above the capital, Blackhawks unleashed ropes as commandos rappelled into the heart of enemy territory. Within minutes, they'd secured 2 of Aidid's top advisors in a daytime raid. The mission seemed on track to wrap in under an hour. But then, Super 61, one of the Blackhawks ferrying troops overhead, was hit by a rocket-propelled grenade, and in the blink of an eye, its tail rotor exploded. The helicopter spun before plunging into a crowded neighborhood. The pilots were gone instantly, and the surviving crew was dazed, injured, and alone in hostile territory. As American forces scrambled to mount a rescue, a second shockwave tore through the sky. Super 64 was also hit. Flames erupted as the chopper spiraled downward and smashed into another sector of the city. The operation had gone from swift extraction to a mission of survival. Thousands of hostile fighters surged toward the crash sites. Trapped and under siege, U.S. troops found themselves encircled by a tidal wave of SNA gunmen and furious civilians. Pinned down with dwindling ammunition, the Americans dug in. Little birds, AH-6 and MH-6 gunships buzzed overhead, raining down rockets and minigun fire in an effort to protect the downed Blackhawk crews. However, the resistance did not waver. Enraged mobs armed with AKs and machetes surged block by block, cutting off reinforcements and overwhelming UN checkpoints. A relief convoy fought to reach the chopper's crash zones, but was repeatedly stalled and ambushed. With escape routes blocked, some Rangers were forced to withdraw on foot through a gauntlet of gunfire. It wouldn't be until dawn on October 4th that the survivors could finally be extracted. 18 Americans had lost their lives. 73 more were wounded. The images of the Blackhawks falling from the sky would haunt American officials for years to come, with war planners starting to doubt if these helicopters were truly equipped to endure the brutality of combat. Secret missions. In the years that followed, the Black Hawk would have to prove time and time again that it had what it took to dominate the skies all around the world, serving in the fleets of American allies like Turkey, Brazil, Colombia, Australia, Sweden, and South Korea. But perhaps the most legendary moment in Black Hawk history came in May 2011 during Operation Neptune Spear, the mission to eliminate Osama bin Laden. Departing from Jalalabad, Afghanistan, SEAL Team 6 crossed into Pakistani airspace undetected aboard highly classified Black Hawk models, which, according to President Barack Obama, had been, quote, modified for stealth. During the operation, one of the helicopters crash-landed inside bin Laden's compound. As the SEALs completed their mission and prepared for exfiltration, they were forced to destroy the downed aircraft with explosives to prevent its secrets from falling into enemy hands. Yet part of the tale survived. When photos of the wreckage emerged, aviation experts and defense analysts dissected every detail. The tail rotor design revealed additional blades, allowing for slower rotation and reduced noise. The fuselage bore smooth, uninterrupted surfaces without standard rivets and exposed hardware. These features suggested the use of radar-absorbent materials and specially contoured surfaces to scatter or nullify enemy radar returns. The aircraft, it seemed, didn't look like any other Black Hawk, appearing more like a flying tank than a traditional chopper, with one SEAL member even referring to it as a, quote, Decepticon. To this day, the U.S. military has never confirmed the exact nature of the specialized Black Hawks used to take out Osama bin Laden. This continued secrecy has led many to believe they're still in use, deployed in some of the world's most secret missions. The future of the Hawk. While the Black Hawk stealth variants will likely remain classified for years to come, there are still plenty of other upgraded models out there that are actively transforming this legendary helicopter into an even smarter and more autonomous war machine. Hamid Salim, Vice President of Army and Air Force Systems at Sikorsky put it plainly, quote, "Soldiers will rely on Black Hawk helicopters well into the future, and upgrades to the aircraft today will pay dividends for decades, enabling new missions such as deploying and managing launched effects." Among the headline upgrades is a new generation of high-performance engines designed to give the Black Hawk more power, more range, and greater survivability. These enhancements are particularly critical for naval variants like the MH-60R, also known as the Seahawk, the U.S. Navy's airborne predator that prowls oceans in search of enemy submarines. Equipped with new engines, these machines could soon conduct hunts even farther, strike faster, and loiter longer over hostile waters. However, the most revolutionary development lies in autonomy. The Army has embarked on a modernization campaign to upgrade nearly 2,400 Black Hawks across its fleet. In partnership with top aerospace firms, engineers are reimagining the helicopter's cockpit, replacing traditional controls with advanced flight automation systems that can think, act, and even land without a pilot. The vision is bold: a Black Hawk that can fly itself into combat. Dr. Mark Groden, CEO of Skyrise, a company at the forefront of aviation autonomy, said, quote, "Our goal is to make flying simple and safe enough that any service person can fly any aircraft." If this vision came to reality, no longer would missions hinge on seasoned pilots alone. Troops could call in a Black Hawk that flies itself into a firefight, evacuates the wounded, or resupplies a remote outpost without risking a single crew member. With these upgrades, the Black Hawk is poised to remain one of the world's premier aerial platforms for decades to come. A legend forged in the ashes of Vietnam, reborn as the most formidable sky warrior of its generation, and now evolving once again to dominate any battle to come.